Welcome and thanks for logging on to WYCC.org for In the Loop, the After Show. Joining us today are our guests, Aaron Del Mar, Chairman of the Cook County Republican Party, and Kavanagh, President of MediaPro's 24/7, and John Giokaris, Political Director for Chicago Young Republicans. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
This week we learned the city is pulling back streets and sanitation workers, building inspectors from its Safe Passage program just 2 months into the school year, saying that half the children who were to transfer into these welcoming schools didn't go, so they need fewer people. And is this a good idea?
Well, it's not surprising. Didn't we all say this was just for show, the first week of school, a big PR show? You know, a couple questions come to my mind. First of all, I want to know, where did these 50% of the kids go? They're all from low-income neighborhoods, so I can't imagine they're all going to private schools. I want to know that. Where are these children right now? I suppose they really have to pull back. So far, they haven't had any incidents, so I guess the program's worked, and hopefully it can work without expensive street and sands employees manning the roads. I don't know.
Yeah, was this a good idea to start? I mean, we learned that building inspectors are inspecting fewer buildings. Who'd have thunk, because they were busy watching children go to and from school.
I think, just like Ken Ann said, I think it was a definite PR stunt. I mean, it boils me a little bit to hear about pulling our building inspectors out to doing this. I mean, I think there's a viable way to do it. It's important to get kids to school safely there and back, but to be pulling major services out of the Chicago budget to do it, I mean, how long are they putting the business people behind because the building inspectors can't come in and check out the buildings and they can't get their occupancy permits? I mean, that's going to have a ripple effect throughout the Chicago economy. Why can't you go out and hire TSA or traffic agents at a lower rate and have them out there, or look at volunteers? There's a lot of different ways they could have implemented this, and I think it was a significant PR stunt that's finally over, and we can get back to moving forward.
You say it was a PR stunt, but John, I'm wondering, you could also argue that this worked. There were no safety incidents during Safe Passage.
Yeah, absolutely. I think both Aaron and Ann make very good points, but that's also true. I think it's pretty clear that the Emanuel administration was very nervous about the whole transition of having to relocate students from shutting down 47 schools, and thankfully there were relatively no incidents. It went by pretty smoothly, and I think Emanuel couldn't be more happy about that.
We are just 2 months into the school year, though.
Granted, I mean, right. Anything could happen between then and now, and there's a lot of things on his plate. But I mean, when you look at the CPS budget, I mean, they had $1 billion deficit this year. They've already liquidated all the cash reserves. They've cut costs anywhere they can. They've raised property taxes to their highest limit. I just don't see how it was avoidable. I mean, shutting down the 47 worst performing schools was the last resort, and they took it, and hopefully it'll work out. But again, without making more substantial changes to the CPS system, I don't know what other option there was.
Does that those closed schools, does that have legs going into the 2015 mayor's race?
Definitely. I think that Karen Lewis has got her target right on Rahm Emanuel, and I think that she's gonna flex as much as she can to try to find someone that's going to work with her in the CPS a little bit easier. I think that it's going to be incredibly difficult to find a candidate, first of all, but if they do, I think that he's going to be facing some strong opposition, with the crime rate that was going up, the issues with the schools. I mean, there's some strong issues that people are going to have to discuss.
I just think Rahm hasn't really made the argument correctly for what he did. I mean, to me, why are we protesting shutting down schools that have been failing for generations? Generations, going back to the 1960s, people should be protesting that their kids haven't gotten a fair shake educationally wise. And I mean, the inequities in funding and the inequities in the different schools in the different parts of the city, that's what people should be protesting, the bad quality of these schools.
That's a good point. But if I can also add, something that bothers me about the way the system is structured is, first of all, I don't understand how the CTU could have complete monopolized service of a critical service like public education. And on top of that, there's a good case to be made that they've rigged the system so that they care more about the quantitative number of teachers employed instead of the qualitative number of teachers employed. Because let's face it, good teachers, bad teachers alike, they all pay the same union dues, and that's more money for Karen Lewis to play with, with her political shenanigans. And that is a critical issue that has to be addressed as well.
All right, we'll switch from education to sports. The Red Sox won the World Series, and the Cubs lost ground with the neighbors. They put up a mock-up of a Wrigley Field sign, that some folks who own rooftops on Sheffield say will change their views, block their views. Are we back to square one on this, John?
Well, I mean, we were discussing this beforehand, and I mean, look, anyone who's living around Wrigley Field, I mean, you know what you're getting yourself into. I mean, it's like moving to O'Hare and being, teed off about planes flying overhead, or, I mean, come on, this was always a risk. It could have happened. It did happen. To start, protesting and showing outrage over this, I'm not buying it.
But the rooftop owners say a contract is a contract is a contract.
Yeah, I'm just so over this story. I mean, the Cubs promised them a view. They didn't promise them the same view. And, all you have to do is look at the Boston Red Sox. They made major renovations at Fenway, and they made a lot of changes that the Cubs are talking about now. And what has the result been? 3 World Series championships in 10 years. So, I think that it's time. And the neighbors have to just, take a deep breath, and it'll be good for them in the long run, too. Their property values will go up.
We'll leave it at that. Aaron Del Mar, Ann Kavanagh, John Giokaris, thank you for your insight.
Be sure to check out In the Loop every week, Thursday nights at 7. And thanks for joining us here on WYCC.org. Goodbye.